Hello everyone and welcome back to another session of Elden Ring PvP and another weapon showcase. Today we're taking a look at the Butchering Knife. Another classic weapon. This is pretty darn good in this game, I have to say. I'm a fan. There's just something very fun, very satisfying about using this weapon. And I would really attribute it to the jumping R2 attacks, but anyway. This weapon is one that is dropped by an NPC invader, Anastasia the Tarnished Eater. Now, you'll get this weapon from her after the second encounter. For most people, that will be on Mount Gelmer. It's northwest of the bridge that's there, the bridge that's east of a minor herd tree. I'll have a image on screen showing where that's located. By default, this weapon will have Barbaric Roar on it. It requires 16 strength and 20 dexterity in order to wield, and it weighs 8.5 units. I went with the Keen upgrade on this because that is the only upgrade path that gets an A scaling. Its base damage on Keen is 283, E scaling in strength, and an A scaling in dex. Overall, pretty straightforward. Good weapon. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I put Sword Dance on it. As you can see, it does great damage with Sword Dance, but that's not really too much of a shock. It is a great axe, after all. So, getting started with the pros. First and foremost, it's got some pretty decent damage. It's just kind of par for the course for its class of weapon though, so it is what it is. Again, with that as well, decent hyper armor. Both good things. I would say that the biggest pro is the hyper armor, without a doubt. That said, another significant pro of the weapon, not so much for PvP, but it can make or break a fight. More so in PvE, successful hits actually will heal you slightly. So that's a nice little bonus. Again, like I said, not very applicable for PvP purposes, but it can make or break a fight on occasion. Other than that, though, the running R2 attacks are great for roll catching people who are rolling around you. They are great for when you run past your opponent, like I did with this guy right here, and how he ran past me going for his running attack. How my swing has such a wide, swing, and it starts much farther back. It let me actually catch him with the attack, even though he had passed me. And that's something that happens pretty frequently. I find that to be a very useful way of, if you don't feel like being patient, I find that to be a useful way of dealing with people using the great thrusting swords, the heavy thrusting swords. You run past them with them on your right-hand side, go for a running R2 attack, and call it a day. You just have to be careful not to trade with them because they will win due to more than likely having the Spear Talisman on. So that's something to be mindful of. It's not the smart play, but it does work if you can play it right. That said, that's really all that there is as far as pros. I mean, aside from that, the biggest pro is that it's just a fun weapon to use. The R2s really, there's something very satisfying about that chop motion that you do, especially when you can jump into the air and do it. It's great. But moving into the cons of the weapon, it is not the fastest weapon in the world. So you gotta be mindful of that when you're fighting against people with faster weapons. You can't just go in for a hit because your hyper armor doesn't really activate until midway through swing. So you really have to kind of bait people to trade hits with you and play it a little smart. Aside from that, I've noticed that on your R1 attacks with this weapon, a lot of the attacks, they just miss. Because for some reason, the hitbox, it's a bit narrow. Someone will be just slightly to the side, and you just won't hit them. And that's unfortunate with those attacks, because you would think they're, kind of the bread and butter of the weapon, but no. They're really not that great. The R2s really kind of shine. The backstep R1 is really nice, though. That's a great attack. If you can do a roll, not reverse roll, but do a ravioli step into the backstep R1, that's good stuff. Aside from that, a minor gripe, and the reason why I use the weapon, or the Ash of War that I do, as opposed to Storm Stomp, because I've had questions on that. Storm Stomp doesn't do a true combo with the two-handed R2. It will with the two-handed R1, and that's great, but I feel like if I'm going to be bothering with doing Storm Stomp, I want to be able to land the Toe Chop, because that's kind of the fun thing about the weapon. The Toe Chop is great, but it is what it is. Aside from that, there really aren't too many cons for the weapon, in my opinion. It's not the greatest weapon in its class. It's not the worst weapon in its class. It's got decent damage. The healing on successful hits is a nice little bonus. But everything else pro-wise for the weapon is standard to that class of weapon. It's not overly unique. I mean, yeah, it's a dexterity scaling great axe, and that's really good, because it means we'll have variety in what different types of builds can use. A dexterity build can use a great axe. Like how with the Ice Rind Hatchet, a dexterity build can use an axe, and it is still really darn good. It's nice having that variety. And if you are on a dexterity build, I would encourage you to try this weapon, see how you like it. Maybe try something other than Sword Dance on it. Maybe something like Wild Strikes. I don't know. There's options, and that's really the great thing about a lot of the weapons in this game. It reminds me of Dark Souls 2 in that way, where it gave you a lot of options for a lot of different build types. So, that's all I've got on this one. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video, though. There are 2 more fights after this one. Let me know what weapons you guys want to see. Let me know if you guys have used the Butchering Knife, what Ashes of War you've put on it. And tell me about your experience with the weapon if you have any. That said, if you guys have enjoyed, thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you all next time.